Oh, we're hot. Such an exciting beginning.
So the headset's just for yourself, just to hear what's going on while we talk?
Yeah, I know. Everyone feels like, well, how come I don't get headset? I want to. There's no production. No one's talking in my ear. It would be cool.
Get him to say this.
Ask him about that calendar.
Calendars.
You've been in those, haven't you?
No.
No?
No, I never put myself in there.
You sure?
Yeah. 100% positive. Never did it.
You know, the people are going to wonder now.
Wonder what? If I actually am a firefighter?
No, if you've been in a calendar. I mean, it's the assumption is that if you're a firefighter, at some point, you were June or July.
No.
I don't know. I would probably be February.
I was...
Now it's coming.
Those years are well past me. Those vain years. Those were like when in my teen years.
I thought you meant like veins, but you meant like vanity.
That's what I meant, vanity, yeah. Those vain years.
You have to be careful. I'm not good at pronouncing Portuguese names.
Figueira.
Oh, that's so authentic.
Figueira.
First name Bryan. That's very Portuguese too.
That's very not Portuguese.
Really?
Bryan?
I've heard so many Portuguese guys named Bryan.
So I mean, like back in the 70s and 80s when I would go there, my relatives couldn't even say my name properly. Right?
Yeah. Well, picture my name to an Italian.
Jason?
There's no J in the Italian alphabet.
Well, what about when you have like João? Like John?
They don't go to Italy.
There's no John?
Is it Giovanni or Johnny or is it the G-I?
Yeah, it's a G.
Yeah.
As opposed to a J.
Yeah, so mine, I got... People used to call me Gayson.
Because of the J?
I hope it was because of that. So we had a nice talk last week. I'm like, we should do a podcast and just talk about the stud of a firefighter. And then you were free.
Yeah, I don't know about the stud part, though.
Yeah, well, we'll get...
Studs are in walls.
Yeah. All right, dude. So I mean, we're talking about like we talked a lot about like. To me, what stood out was a call or a calling or like a role, and then that evolved into like where we are with like role models and where we are with like people in general. And so after our conversation, I'm like, I have so many more questions. So. I mean, I did come up with a little itinerary to evolve this conversation, but you being a firefighter, let's start there. Let's start with like, how old were you?
How did it come to be?
Yeah, you didn't wake up one day and be like, I'm going to put out fires.
No, dude. I'll have to go back like 27 years. That's where the story starts. I jumped.
You can skip a couple years in the middle.
I will skip it, but like I jumped from the lake. I jumped from the ferry in November. It was -30. I jumped in Lake Ontario to save a guy from the island ferry.
Were you already a firefighter?
No.
Oh, this is before. How old were you?
I was 25.
Wow.
I was 25, yeah. And anyway, long story short, after that event, I proceeded to receive some medals from the government, St. John's, Bronze Cross, some other things. And then, while I was in Ottawa, there was a staff sergeant from the Marine unit. He's like, oh, you should try to become a cop. And so, I went through the process, and I was right at the interview stage, and there was the undercover cop that was murdered by 2 women in his car, and my wife was pregnant at the time. His wife was pregnant at the time, and my wife's like, "Nah, you can't do that." She goes, "There's no way," and I'm like, "Oh, that's a one-off. Like, the chances of that happening." And she's like, "No." So you can't argue with a pregnant lady. And so anyway, I kind of put that on the back burner, and I just let it kind of slip away. And then years went by. I was working at the airport, and I took a hazmat course over at the training facility that they have there. And I asked the guys, what's it take to become a firefighter? And we had a small little talk, and they were just starting a course. So it was a brand new facility that they opened up at the airport for training firefighters. And I was the first student to sign up. I went home and I told Frank, I was like, here's an opportunity. This is what I'm going to try to pursue, right? And I was ready for her to every excuse in the book of why I shouldn't do it, right? Financially, because, you know, like the course was, you know, 5 figures, right?
Oh, wow.
So, you know, it's a 5-figure course. And she's like, oh, you better do it now. She goes, you're 37. She goes, you're not going to get any younger. It's going to only get harder.
So what were you doing before?
I was towing airplanes for Air Canada.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you were at the airport. You
I was
mentioned.
already at the airport. I was already involved in that environment. And I signed up to the course, graduated. Fortunately, I graduated top of my class, which gave me an interview at the airport.
Wow.
And, you know, I did well in my interview. I got hired, and it's been a 17-year process now. Right? That's how I became a firefighter.
What other traits help you be a firefighter outside of like bravery and like loyalty and like? I mean, you said you did well in your interview. You were finished top of your class. Are you just smart?
Far from smart. There's intelligence and there's smarts, right? You can have street smarts. You can be book intelligent and have no street smarts.
Sure.
So I think there's a combination of both. You need a little bit of intelligence and you need some smarts.
Okay.
About you. And what other traits? It depends on what field you're going into, you know, or what type of firefighting you're going into. Obviously, you know, like if you're going into wildland firefighting, knowing the structure of a building really isn't essential, right? In airport firefighting, knowing the structure of a building is important, but not as important as knowing the structure of an aircraft.
Sure.
So if you have some knowledge of airplanes and stuff like that, so each field of firefighting will have its benefits if you're trained or you have some experience in other fields. So, you know, if you're a city firefighter, having some knowledge in plumbing or electrical or, you know, woodwork, because then you understand what's happening behind the wall.
Yeah.
Where the studs are placed, where there could be an electrical line, where there could be a water line, stuff like that.
What's something crazy that we don't know about airplanes that we should know? Where should we not sit?
I mean, there's stuff that's knowledgeable, right? I mean, like there's every moving part on that airplane is designed to kill you when you're on the outside of it, right? You know what I mean? But
okay. I mean, outside of the engines.
Well, no, I mean landing gear, flaps, all that stuff that moves, anything that moves, right, is going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Potentially kill you. But I think something that a lot of people don't know is, you know, the burn rate from inside to outside is about a minute.
Wow.
So you have a minute before that fire breaks through.
Why is that?
Well, the material is so thin.
Oh,
right?
okay. For lightweight?
The metal is very, very thin.
Yeah.
And then you have all the combustibles inside the aircraft, right? And it's a tube, so everything gets really confined. It gets really hot really fast.
Yeah.
And then once, you know, you only have a minute for it to break through the skin.
Dang. You stress me out. I don't know if I want to fly anymore.
Flying is okay.
It's the landing is the hard part.
Landing and takeoff are hard.
So when it comes to like, you know, that idea of like a firefighter, they wait around a lot. That kind of, maybe it's an unfair assumption. Tilt your body a little bit.
I think
like this.
every job has an unfair assumption, right?
Well, what's your unfair assumption of me?
I don't know your profession well enough.
It was a trap question. That's okay. Keep going.
You know, for example, like teachers.
Yeah.
Right? You know, the unfair assumption is that they get into it just so then they can have their summers off.
Sure.
Right? You know, I mean, like, that's a benefit of having that job, but I don't think that's why a lot of people get into it. I think some people may look at it that way.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't.
They also get March break.
Pardon me? They get March break too. Yeah, Christmas.
Such a jerk.
You know, the thing with the firefighter, you know, like, you know, sitting around doing nothing. I think
playing cards.
Yeah, maybe cards.
Yeah,
checkers. But I think it's an unfair assumption that we're just sitting around doing nothing. A lot of that downtime that we have, there's a lot of training that takes place that a lot of people don't get.
Of course.
See, right? So we do a lot of training. There's a lot of working out. There's a lot of studying. You know, there is some downtime where you need to sit back and it's like, you know, I'm going to watch the hockey game because I just need to de-stress. Right?
Yeah, because you guys are like you're sort of on like yellow alert all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, I think that's what maybe is ignored or misunderstood is that like, you know, if you ever watch a video like the guy's like the alarm goes off, everyone I don't know if you guys slide down a pole still, but
They got rid of those a long time ago.
I always figure like, why don't you just have it on the first floor? Everything.
Yeah. Well, that's how they are now. Everything's on the first floor.
I mean, that's really funny though. And there's no Dalmatian either.
No Dalmatians either.
Okay.
You know why they started using Dalmatians?
Because they had 100 of them.
No. Wrong. That's a movie. And it was 101.
I know.
They're deaf. They're toned to be like that breed has a tendency to be deaf, right? And so when you have a dog so first they were there to keep the horses company, but two, in the olden days when the horses would be pulling the carriage and you have the bells going and a lot of loud voices, the dogs wouldn't be startled.
Okay.
Majority of them would have a tendency to be deaf.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a really good insight.
Yeah.
But you guys don't have them anymore, so it doesn't matter.
We don't use them anymore. Especially at the airport, it would suck when they run across the field.
Yeah, but you guys are on like a hair trigger of like ready to go instantly. And so that constant like tension is exhausting. I don't think people realize like when someone is under acute stress and always like any second now, picture like if your wife's about to go into labor. It's like today's the day, probably, maybe. Could be during the night. Like, are you gonna sleep good? You're gonna be chill? Are you gonna enjoy what you know? You're gonna be like paranoid.
Yeah.
So I think that's where like a lot of the like the downtime is a necessity, right? But I mean, along with that comes like probably like, you know, getting to know the guys, building up those bonds.
A lot of that happens when you're doing like your morning checks on the truck.
Yeah.
You're talking about like, what'd you do over the weekend? What'd you do last night? And you tell your stories, catch up on people's families, people's, well-being, their vacations, right? So that's where that bonding takes place. Coming back from a call, a good call.
Yeah.
You deliver a baby, CPR, and you have that conversation in the back of the truck. It's like, oh, man, it's a really good job. Those are the moments that are far between each other, and when those situations do happen, what was happening just prior to that call just goes away. So there's been times where individuals are just not getting along for whatever reason. They go on a call, deliver a baby, CPR call. Something good came out of the call, and everything that was happening at the hall that was just not jiving between two individuals just kind of goes out the window, and you're starting from zero again, right? And you're building up strong relationships and building off of that good event. Yeah, makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's like an equalizer.
Yeah.
Oh, when your instincts kick in, like you can like ignore that you dislike someone or that someone like did you wrong or whatever. You just annoyed. You can't love everybody the same.
No, but you have to kind of throw everything out the window.
Yeah.
Like all that, the negativities of what was going wrong, and you just have to realize that the guy sitting or the girl sitting beside you is there to work with you, in a team environment to get a job accomplished. Right? And then you can't help but feel good after that.
Sure. How do you celebrate?
Man.
Do you celebrate?
No,
you just go back. It's just your job.
You just go back and you just go back to doing what you were doing before, right? Finish a workout, finish a meal, do some reading until the next call. It's a busy environment. I don't think a lot of people realize, but we're in the 7,000 calls a year.
Wow.
Between everything that I fell down and I hurt my knee to a plane going off the end of the runway. Obviously, the latter doesn't happen as much as I fell down and I hurt myself, right? You get a lot of those, right? And then all the stuff in between, CPR calls, babies being delivered, people being trapped, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah. I want to go back to the time you saved that person. What was
the jumping in the lake? Because there's a couple where I've saved some people
Mr. Brake.
As a firefighter, and the one.
Okay, let's start with the one where like that.
Where I jumped in the lake.
Yeah, it was the trigger for all of this. Yeah, you jumped in the lake.
Yeah, it
was cold.
It was cold. was minus 30. It was November 16th.
That's very
It
cold.
was minus 16.
That's how you make ice cubes.
Ice was already starting to form on the lake.
I bet.
So Francesca and I, we worked at the island airport. It was a year before we were getting married. And I went to go get the ferry, and they left early. Like they left 2 minutes before their departure time, right? And the only reason they left early was they were going across to pick up a fuel truck. So when the fuel truck is being brought onto the island airport, no one travels with the truck. So they go there, they bring the truck on, and the boat comes right back across. So even though I missed the boat, it's not like I would have been delayed half an hour on its normal routine. I was maybe delayed 10 minutes total, right? But that sequence had to happen because I would have, if I would have been on the ferry, I would have been in my car and I wouldn't have seen the guy jump into the lake. But anyway, I was outside because now I want to get ahead of the rest of the individuals that are leaving the airport as well. I want to be first in the parking lot because I'm delayed by like 10, 15 minutes. So I'm standing outside. I'm having a conversation with a guy beside me. Captain honks the horn. We look up at him. He points down into the water. And what we thought was a dog, because of the distance that we were at from the individual, right? Mm-hmm. And the time of the year, he was wearing a parka that had the fur around it.
Oh, yeah.
An African-American man with a big afro. So from a distance, poor dog fell into the water because there's no fencing around that there is now. But back in the day, there was no fencing. You have feral cats, you have some dogs that are just wild, and we thought, got too close to the edge and fell in. As we got closer, we realized it's a guy in the water. And so we watched him go down twice. And then on the third time, just as the boat was coming into the U-shaped docking area, right, all we see is his head. And the water line is right there at his lips, and he's like taking his last breath. But it's because he's not... Arms are no longer flapping, so he's not swimming.
Right.
And I looked at the guy beside me, and I took off my jacket, and I said, I'll be right back. This is what they told me after, right? In my head, I said, hold my jacket. The words out of my mouth were, I would be right back. So I slipped off my boots.
That's amazing.
And just as the ferry started to turn, so then it wouldn't crush the guy inside the docking area, he started to sink. I jumped up onto the railing, and as soon as I felt the boat make its turn, I dove in. And as he was sinking, I caught him by the jacket. I brought him back up to the surface. He looked at me straight in the eyes. He's like, save me. And it was like pure vodka coming off his breath. Yeah. And then he passes out. And so I turn him around. And I have him in a headlock now. And I look back at the boat, and the movie Titanic was like right there in my head, because all you see is the prop of the boat. Yeah. Now the captain saw me jump in. He has the thing in reverse, and he's just chopping up the water. And I'm like, oh, I can't get out. I'm euchred. I'm in a spot where I just can't get out. Like it's a 30-foot drop from the top of the docking area to the water surface. And I saw the big tractor tires that they have on the side that buffer the boat as it comes in. I reached out to that, and I was just holding on to the tire, and I thought, if I can get over to the docking area, the ramp, right, that goes to like a foot of water. And I'm like, if I pass out there, at least I pass out in a foot of water as opposed to where I was. So I just go from tire to tire to tire, and it gets to a point where the tires are where the rim would be. You can see that rim section to the tread side, because they're so close to the mainland now that you don't need the tire there. They're just there as spares. And I'm like, I've committed myself. I've pushed myself off. I'm like, I have nothing to hold on to. And there was a little drain hole so the water doesn't collect. I throw my fingers in there, and I'm holding on. I have my feet on the wall. And someone from the boat had jumped off, ran around, lowered the dock all the way into the water, and with a pike pole reached out, grabbed Buddy by the coat, and as he starts to pull him in, I push off. I grab a life ring that was floating there in the water. That went in one arm. I'm holding on to Buddy with the other. They get us onto the dock. I went right into fetal position. Like the body just like snaps right up.
Wow.
And anyway, they got us to the hospital. While all that was happening, Francesca's on the island watching police boat. Like they all were. Like police boat, fireboat, ambulances showing up on the mainland. So all this stuff is happening. And our manager says to Franca, that was Bryan. He just jumped in the lake. he doesn't want to marry you anymore. He's trying to swim for it. Because we were a year away from
just
getting married.
as a joke.
As a joke.
Not realizing
not realizing that I had jumped in.
That's awesome.
When he did find out, he goes back to Francesca. He's like, Bryan actually jumped in the lake. And she's like, it wasn't funny the first time. And he goes, no, this is the hospital that he's at. Go get him. So anyway, she came up to the hospital. And this all happened around 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
By the time I got discharged, Franca drove me home. I made it home to watch myself on the 6 o'clock news. No YouTube at the time. No Google. No internet as what we know it. Right? So it was like, I walked in. My mom's like, what happened to you? Because obviously when they put me on the ambulance, they had to cut my pants off because everything was wet and soaking to my. So the only pieces of clothing that was dry was my leather jacket that I told Buddy to hold on to, and my boots that I had taken off.
Yeah.
So they gave me a pair of hospital pants were like a size 44, and back then I was like a 28, so I had to put it like in a knot. I didn't even have a belt, no T-shirt, no nothing. I go home, my mom's like, "What happened to you?" And I'm like, "Let's watch the news." So we start watching news. She goes, "What? You're on TV?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "What happened?" I'm like, "Watch the news. They'll tell you." So, and then I went to work the next day. I went to work the next day because the guy I was working with couldn't take airplanes out of the hangar. And this is when they used to have the traffic report.
Yeah.
Right. And so I felt obligated to go get the plane out of the hangar. And I went there and I actually saw Buddy's footprints in the snow on top of the tire that he jumped off of. But I also saw his handprints. So right when he jumped, he tried changing his mind. He changed his mind and tried to grab onto the tire. But because of the snow, it was like Sylvester Stallone, or not Stallone, but Sylvester the Cat, scraping down the pole, right? It was just, and so he slipped into the water. And that was a process of starting me on this path. Not knowing it back then, obviously, but
did you have traits like that before? I mean, obviously not like jumping in the water, but like bailing people out, jumping in, putting yourself in harm's way without even thinking about it.
Not that I can recall.
That was the first.
That was the first,
big one.
Putting somebody else's life before my own. That was the first one. All right.
So what do people say about it? What did your friends say?
Oh, back then it was like the 15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere without someone mentioning it.
He's a hero.
Well, yeah, that was. It's not. I don't look at it that way, but obviously that was the classification, right, or the designation that they gave. But unlike today's world, an event like that is only relative for maybe 24 hours.
Yeah.
With everything else that's happening in the world, right? Everything that you see on social medias and YouTubes and TikToks, and that event only, in my time, it lasted months, right? Because it was,
because then you got commendations for it.
The news of the day.
Yeah.
Right? It was the news of the day. And unlike now, where something like that might get 24 hours worth of, did you see this story? And then all of a sudden something else would happen. And then I would be irrelevant in 24 hours. Or that story.
You get lost in the flood of information we always have around us.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Not a lot of people have a good story like that. And it sounds like you have a few of them.
I do have a few stories. But not as good as that one.
That one's pretty good.
That one is good because I wasn't a firefighter at the time.
Yeah, so you didn't have training.
Didn't have the training.
You're just an instinct.
It was just someone was suffering, and I had to do something.
And you had your little superhero catchphrase you threw in.
Hold my jacket.
I'll be right back.
I think I don't know if Terminator had already come out. Maybe Terminator did come out. It was just stuck in my head. I'll be back. Yeah. So.
You must have had superhero dreams, and you'd be like, if I'm in a situation, I'm gonna be like, I'll be right back.
No, I actually I have mentioned to people, it was one of those things where everyone believes in their own little thing. I happen to believe in God. It was just Bryan, you're always running off your mouth. Put your money where your mouth is. So
what do you mean? What do you mean you run your mouth?
What do you mean? Back when you're 25, you're invincible, indestructible. You can do everything. No harm comes to you. I would do this if I had. I would do this if I had. There's always those kinds of things, right? So that was the opportunity where it's hey man, that's just the way I saw it. Always running off your mouth. Now here's a situation. Would you what you claim that you would always do. Put others before yourself, be there to help. And those are the kind of questions that they, why do you want to be a police officer, or why do you want to be in emergency services? I like to help people. Everyone says it.
That's such a bad answer, though. It's bad because
it's a bad answer because everyone says it.
Yeah,
it's a bad answer. I mean, it's truthful to some.
I mean, everyone should say that, right? I mean, why do you exist? I want to help you. I want to be a good person. No. That's it? I mean, can we go one page deeper than that?
You should be able to go.
So what did you say?
What did I say to what?
When you did your interview?
Well, obviously, I like to help people.
Didn't you see the news that time? Were you wearing your medals?
No, I thought you meant like when I tried out to be a cop, like to be a police officer.
No, that's what I mean.
No. Even before that, I tried as soon as I got out of high school. I tried at 19 to be a cop, right? And that didn't work out, right? You know what I mean? So I didn't want to be a cop. I like to ride. I actually said, I want to ride motorcycles. Is what I said. I want to be part of the police unit. Why do you want to be a cop? I want to be part of the police unit or the motorcycle unit. That was, truthfully, yeah.
That's like trying
That's
to
19-year-old answer.
Go out for the K9 unit. It's like, I love dogs.
I love dogs, right? It's a good reason to be in the K9 unit.
Obviously, I mean, you kind of need to like dogs.
You need to know how to ride a motorcycle to be on the motorcycle division, right?
And you watch Chips too much.
I did watch Chips a lot.
Yeah.
I think your younger audience will not.
Nah, that's, you know what? I've realized I get a lot of references from stuff that's like 30 years before I was born. Now, people are so like momentary, like Nemo, with what they recall. Like, then they miss it, You don't know what Chips is? Go look it up. So you like Chips. And you want to be a motorcycle guy. They had a movie. They had a remake.
They did have a remake.
That wasn't bad.
A little bad.
It was terrible. But then, so you've had other instances where you've saved people's lives. And how different was that compared to that obvious first? Did it feel different because it's like your job now?
One is work related, obviously. So, but it doesn't mean that you don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're prepared for it. Like every day you go into work, it's like today's going to be the day.
Yeah.
Today's going to be the day. Right.
Like you're looking forward to that.
No, it's not. I've always said, if I don't do anything in a 24-hour shift, right? Like if I don't have to leave the hall to go run a medical, or that means no one is injured. It's a good thing. Like if we don't have to respond, it's actually a good thing. That means no one is hurt. No one's hurting. No one's in need, right? But every time the tones go off, it's like, oh, this is the one. Even driving into work, it's like, you're always thinking like, well, what if today is the day?
Is it like a weird thrill?
I guess it would be. Yeah, I guess.
Kind of like an adrenaline rush.
It is.
And not that because you're not happy that someone's in danger. But it's kind of like, I'm going to jump into action. There's a need.
I want to help. That is true, I believe, with everyone in emergency services. When that tone goes off, you go into my job, be it police, ambulance or fire. My job is to assist, right? And you feel good and you're prepared to go and do as much as you possibly can, right, to assist. And once that help is done, you feel good about it.
Of course.
Yeah.
I would say so. So there's obviously a want to like come to the rescue. There's a little superhero aspect to that. But then there's also the component of like working as like a unit or a team. Like, so there's like an inherent trust in the people that you're with. How do you build that? How do you just like, because like for me to be like, I know that the person beside me is going to do their job so that I can do mine. And then I'm going to be safe because he's looking out for me. Where does that come from? Is that just assumed? Or is that like something that with these different calls and it kind of builds upon?
One, I think there's an assumption to it.
Yeah.
Based on everything that we watch on TVs, movies, right? There's an assumption of that. It's built on what you do at the hall, obviously. But it's
like
also,
a camaraderie?
Yeah, like built on what you do at the hall. So like, if you're working together to wash the trucks, if you're working together to clean up the hall, when you work together on a medical call or an emergency call. But a lot of it also happens outside of the work where it's like, there's a barbecue or, motorcycle ride, or just a gathering outside of work where you don't see people in their work uniform, right? They're casual, right? So you get to see the real person where they let loose a little bit more, right? You know what I mean? They chill back a little bit more, where someone might be so at work they may be a little bit more hardcore. Outside of work, it's like I didn't get a hole in one in this golf game. Who cares, right? Some people might really want to get the hole in one, but you find, and that's where those bonds are built. A lot of them are outside of work, right?
Would you say, like, in comparison to like the business world or an office where like maybe there's some competition, do you feel like that's not as much there?
I don't think there's a lot of competition. I mean, competition is there to do your best.
Yeah.
Right, guys. A lot of guys work out. I say guys, but a lot of people work out, so then they can better themselves, be prepared. So there's that kind of competition. There's competition, obviously, when you're trying to get a promotion. Like you want to go from a firefighter to an acting captain to a captain to an acting platoon chief, and you're moving your way up, right?
Sure.
So there's those kind of competitions.
Is that a competition more so like against yourself? Like trying to like do your best. I mean, in comparison to
obviously there's other people going for that position.
Yeah.
Right. You have multiple people going for one spot, so there's that competition. So you have to be better than, and I don't mean better in a sense.
Better suited.
Better suited.
Yeah.
Better educated. Better. You've put the time in. It's hard. It's hard for someone to, someone with 25 years. Right, obviously has a lot more experience, knowledge, has dealt with situations than someone that's been there for 5 years.
Sure.
Right, so.
Is there some people that are just not made to be in this line of work?
I think that's with every.
Yeah.
That's every line of work, right?
Yes.
I mean, are there some people that are not? I think there might be. It'd be foolish for me to say everyone is in the right, in the right position at the right time, in that line of work. I think some people are not suited for the position, only because what they saw in their childhood, like what led them to becoming an emergency services person, right? You see all the glory and all that stuff, and then when it really comes down to it, you see things that a lot of the general people don't get to see, and it doesn't,
like what they freeze up, they do the wrong thing.
Some people freeze up. I don't think people do the wrong thing intentionally. It could be like in the confusion, in the that heightened adrenaline state. Could be, instead of picking tool A, you pick tool B. You should have picked tool A, but you picked B, not because intentionally you did it wrong. It's just that because of all the
chaos,
excitement, it comes down to measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of thinking before you grab the tool, you just grab the tool.
Sure.
Right.
Over time, has there been like a change in what you like with these new recruits? Has there been like a difference in like, they don't make them like they used to, kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I thought you'd say that, but I don't really know why. Can you put your finger on it?
I can't put a trigger on why things have changed. Obviously, different upbringings, different age group, different things that you see on TV, all that stuff takes part. Like when I got hired on, it was you don't touch the remote control unless you're cleaning underneath it or you're passing it to a senior guy.
Yeah.
All right. So that wouldn't fly now. I couldn't say to someone, you can't touch the remote control to the TV, right? That just won't fly now, right? But there's something about that where it's like,
so there's like an entitlement.
Not entitlement. You haven't put the time in. Right, like if you don't put that time in, you shouldn't have the I don't want to say the word right, but like, you
Yeah.
shouldn't have the right to watch TV over a guy that's been there for 25 years. And if he says, hey, I want to watch a half hour of this program, even though something else might be on, the junior guy shouldn't have that authority, right, to say I'm going to watch whatever I want. There's something about that, right, that where you have to earn, it's like giving the keys to the car to your kid, right, before you just let them drive off alone, right? You have to go, they have to earn that trust. They have to earn that respect to be in that seat and have total control of that car. Same thing applies. You know what I mean? Like, I mopped a lot of floors.
Yeah.
in my first year, man, I mopped a lot of floors. Even if I just mopped it, I'd go mop it again, right? And you just build. There's something about that. You wash the truck first. It's first to wake up, last to go to bed, right? That's just the way it is, right? I was, making sure that everything was locked down. Fire hall doors were closed. Computers were ready to go. Lights in the hall were turned off. I did all that stuff. Made sure all the garbages were thrown out. Then I would go to bed, and then I'd be up first so that I could be at the truck, right? As the new guy, right?
Yeah.
And then over the years, as new people come in, you kind of pass those traits down where you say, man, this is what you probably want to do to build a good rapport. You don't want to be the last guy to get up and the truck is almost all washed. Then you get up and you wash, as the new guy, right?
So that's kind of slipping away.
Maybe not in all departments,
Yeah.
right?
How about the fire department?
Volunteer departments, like northern, like in, up north where I am, right? Volunteers, right? Because, they come together weekly to do training and stuff like that. They'll wash the trucks. They'll do their events. So
Yeah.
that bonding and that understanding of like, hey, man, you have a volunteer that's been a firefighter for 20 years, 25 years, and a volunteer that's only been there for 1 year. That 1 year person needs to really learn things from the guy that's been there for 25 years because they're not at work every single day.
Yeah.
Right. They're not at the fire hall every single day. Right. So
Yeah.
there's something there that's a little bit different than being in the city. Not better, just different.
I mean, I think maybe like my inclination is to think that things are just softer now. Softer growing up, softer, like there was more like hard knocks and like really like earning your keep and like really like what some people would say is close to like hazing, or would at least feel like it's like you got to, you're the rookie, you got to do all the garbage, the stuff that no one wants.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's looked as like maybe you're like torturing someone, but really is it torture if it's like part of your like earning your keep and learning the ropes and like gaining respect from the people above you? Because like if they went through it and then all of a sudden some new guy's coming and he's like, golden child, like he can do no wrong. He gets exempt from things. Like, who's this guy? Wait, what's he earning?
He's not earning anything. If anything, the industry as a whole is losing because there'll be traditions that would be lost.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. It's just the fire department's based on a military.
Sure.
Right. From the Civil War, that's where you get all the lieutenants and the captains and wearing the bars and the bugles. Right. That's what that comes from. Is from the Civil War, American Civil War. And so there's a lot of traditions that in the way that you said, like, things are softer, right? Over time will be lost. Right.
Yeah.
And then you forget about these things. Right.
Yeah.
So like, when you get a new truck, you back in the truck by hand, like you push it in by hand. Obviously there's, there's some assistance from the driver inside, but the whole idea is you take the truck, everyone from the shift pushes the truck into the fire hall, right? And that goes back years from horse and buggies,
Yeah.
right? When you'd get back, you'd have to push the pumper back into the hall, right?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so small things like that, right? Those are little traditions that If over the years guys are like, I'm not going to push the truck, I'm not pushing the truck back into the hall, well, then you lose,
Yeah.
right, the tradition of, and then you forget why that's even done, right? So
How do you maintain that? How do you teach someone that's like, they just not buying in? They're like, I don't care about that stuff. That's stupid.
I don't think you can teach that. You can't teach it. They just, they have to experience it, right? You can't teach it. You can't put someone in front of a book and say, this is why you do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's,
Because a lot of them, they'll be like, well, why do that? It's dumb.
there is that, right? And you can't just respond by, because we just do it, right? You have to let them know why.
In the past, that would work. Just
because is not an answer.
Do you think like maybe you're like an in-between? Like maybe you've got, like you're not from the era of like, you just smack someone until they do it right. But then because you kind of a little bit still like.
I think I came into
that tail end.
Yeah, the tail end of, like I said, you don't pick up the remote control unless you're cleaning underneath it or passing it. So I came into the tail end of that, right? And then as a younger generation starts coming in and viewpoints are a little bit different, and
Yeah.
and then obviously you have guidelines that you have to follow, SOPs and SOGs, where it's like, and then HR, and you can't,
You just can't call someone a dummy for doing something wrong.
Yeah, you can't, right? You can't, right? There's a term where it's like, are you stupid? And people would be like, did you call me stupid? I'm like, no, I'm asking, are you stupid? As opposed to, you are stupid, right? Just by
That's a nuance. I mean, you're implying that they are stupid. They probably are.
No, you're just asking a question because they may have done something that's just like, man, you didn't think before you did that, right? So you'd be like, are you stupid? And it really makes, back in my time, it makes someone think before they did that same action again, because it was the last time the guy asked me if I was stupid, right?
Yeah.
Right? So you think twice about it.
So I'm like,
right?
am I stupid?
No.
No.
I don't think you are.
No. Because I remember my dad was a plumber, and a couple summers I'd work with the guys, and I was like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16. I don't know anything about plumbing. I'm not a construction tools guy. So someone would ask me for something. The worst is when they asked me for a wrench, and I brought him little pliers. This guy's trying to put 40-foot piece of pipe into something, and I'm bringing him pliers. He threw it at me. And part of my brain is like, yeah, I deserved it. But at the same time, I was like, I didn't know what a wrench was.
There you go.
So I'm like, I was stupid.
So back in his time, you threw something at him.
Yeah.
And so you
don't hit him.
You learned.
Throw it near him.
Yeah, you learned that's not the tool.
That's not a wrench.
Right.
It's a wrench with a
hurt.
hurt.
Time it was, are you stupid?
Yeah.
Right. You couldn't throw things. You couldn't throw things at people. And now it's evolved to a point where you can't even ask the question, are you stupid? Because people take it like, you called me stupid. Right.
Yeah.
So it's evolved to that.
I mean, the idea is like, if you're a firefighter, you got to be tough. Is that true?
No.
No?
Tough in what sense? Like what's tough?
That you can like.
What's tough?
Walk in snow with no shoes.
No, that's not tough.
I meant like mentally tough.
I meant, no, that's not mentally tough. Yes. Right. But at the same time, there's a point where you have to be mentally vulnerable. You have to be able to talk about the things that bother you, or else they get bottled up for a very long time. And then you end up with situations where people, are suffering. And
like mentally?
Mentally, yeah. You see a lot of things, in emergency services where you kind of put things into the back portions of your brain, and you kind of just store them there. And then, like every cup, it overflows eventually. And then, it makes a mess. But if you think that you're mentally tough without letting that out every once in a while, it's going to break you. All right.
So a good question is, well, how do you let it out?
You need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to talk about it, but you need to talk about it with the right people.
Yeah.
Right?
Ooh.
You know, it's tough because there's certain things that you don't want to talk about at home because you're bringing in things to the home surface. You have to talk to obviously someone that's a professional in their field, that when that conversation is taking place with them, it stays in that environment.
Sure.
Right. Back in the day would be the bartender.
Yeah.
You'd go to the bartender, bring the bottle out. You sit there with a whiskey shot, and you'd be pounding them back, and you just verbally would just expel everything that was bad right to the bartender, and the bartender would just listen to it, and that was it.
Yeah.
Right. That's how back in the day. Right.
Sure.
Now they have doctors for that.
Therapists.
Yeah, therapists.
Yeah. Is it hard to disconnect? Like even regardless of like seeing something bad, like how about just drained?
No, I don't think it ever turns off. There's always an element of, if something bad's going to happen there, you could almost see it happening, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that guy's going to fall, or like a police officer, never really off duty. They're always analyzing, right?
Yeah.
They're always looking at, right? You know what I mean? So, I think it's like that with a lot of people in this field. You get trained to a level of, when I used to ride the subway, going downtown Toronto, middle of summer, why is that guy wearing a trench coat?
Yeah.
That would be the thing. Is like, why is he wearing a trench coat?
Sure.
And this is all after like 9/11, right? And you get trained, and you understand that like not everyone's a nice person. A lot of people out there, but at the other hand, it could be like, hey man, he's homeless, and that's his only coat,
Yeah.
and so he wears it all the time, right? So, but you're always analyzing. Yeah.
So you never shut it down.
It never really shuts down. Takes a pause.
Yeah.
You can pause it every once in a
You
while.
ever forget and be like, oh yeah, I have stuff on my mind. It's almost like you feel bad to stop thinking about it.
I don't actually, when I'm on my bike, that's when actually my brain is at its clearest.
Yeah.
Is that, unless of course I'm riding around like 401 traffic, but like up north, that's when the brain really takes a pause from all the what if situations, right?
You're not the first person. I mean, obviously you're not the first person to ever say that, but like, why? Like, is it just like you just find that you're just like alone, just completely like disconnected when you're on your bike?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no distractions like you would have in a car, right? And
Which is interesting. I mean, because like I would, if I've never been on a bike, I'm like, this seems like complicated.
Go back to when you were a kid, when you used to ride your bike.
Yeah.
Did you not remember like that freedom of like, I'm just riding my bike, you're with a group of friends. The only difference between, young kids and older generation like myself are the difference in the toy.
Yeah.
One is a pedal bike and the other one is a vroom vroom bike.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only difference. But it's, you call up a bunch of friends, it's like, hey man, you want to go for a bike ride? Now it just means you're doing 100 kilometers an hour. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it's like you pedal into the forest and you find a trail and you're free and you're, it's a journey. You're escaping, whatever was in the city, right? That's the same thing. So there is a freedom. There is a disconnect, right? And when you're out there, honestly, that's what I find. When I'm out there on the bike, there's that same drive in a car from where I am down to the city. That 2-hour drive in a car is a lot more stressful than the 2-hour ride on a bike. It's the wind is hitting you. You're free. There's a moment there where the engine, the speed, the sound, everything just becomes like one. And there's been times where it's like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
I'm just so
You kind of zone out a little.
zoned out. Like I'm paying attention obviously to the road, but I'm like, man, I got here a lot faster than I thought I would. Right?
Yeah, missing time. But is there some throwback to like being a kid though? Like you did highlight that. It's like there's not a big difference with like just a bike ride with then being on
I
your.
highlighted it when you said I've never ridden a bike before, so I was trying trying to bring you back into your childhood to say, I have ridden a bike, and so then you can understand that there is like, I mean, take a look at people when they ride their bikes up north. They're on the side of a 80-kilometer highway, and they're just pedaling along. And I'm sure there's a point there where there's like, they're just enjoying the moment, like when no cars are flying by them, and they're looking at the trees, and the scenery is great, and they become part of the machine. Like the body becomes the machine, as opposed to, it's almost like the runner's high.
Yeah.
All right. The runners, when they're running, they get into that moment where they hit the runner's high, and they just become a machine. It's just lungs, the heart is pumping, and arms and legs are moving, and there's really no thinking. Right.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing happens when people are riding their bicycles and when people are on their motorcycles. There's a freedom there.
I'm thinking like what comes to mind is like there's it becomes a uniformity of movement. Like it's almost like you're paused. You're doing the same thing for an extended period of time. Like even this video in the background, it's just a car driving, and it's just going. There's no real other distractions. You're just doing the same thing for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. Like it's not like you're flipping switches. You're not like, you don't have to be so active. Like you almost kind of get lost in
100%.
Yeah.
The best rides are the ones I take out to Kingston.
Yeah.
When I go see my daughter.
Yeah.
3.5 hours. Just sit there on the bike. Boom. You're gone.
Yeah. Right? To me, it's almost like time stops, kind of.
It does. I told you there would be times where I'm just like, how did I get here?
Yeah. I'm like conceptualizing it, and it's like, maybe like, when you were a kid, those bike rides, that was like an escape. Like that was like your freedom. And it may be part of like just the pedaling and movement, and like it was uniform. Like there wasn't like all this, like a car is complicated.
Yeah.
There's like elements there, and distraction and noise. But like when you're on a bike, then maybe that is sort of like neutralized. Yeah. I mean, because what I'd like to think of, or like try to introduce to people, is like, what is your like escape? Like, because you can't like go on vacation all the time. You can't you can't shut off the world all the time. But maybe there is something that you can do that is sort of like, when I do this, I find like I center myself. So like you mentioned the runner's high. That's another example.
Yeah, some people meditate. Some people go do yoga. Some people go to the gym.
But I don't think
that's their disconnect. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it works though.
It for some, not for all, but I find that moment when I'm on the bike, that is really the disconnect, the recharging, because you really are escaping everything else that's going on around you. Right? There's been lots of times where I'm just like, I'm going for a bike ride. Yeah. Nowhere to go. Yeah. It's not like I have to go somewhere. I'll just, half an hour in one direction, basically loop around and come back. I've spent an hour on the bike. You know what I mean? And in that 1 hour, there's a lot of like mental clarity where you just like really don't have to be worried about A, B, and C. Right? Yeah. Especially when you've had those. There's been a few times when I've been riding where it's like, it could have been the last time, right? I've had those close to, and then you get an appreciation for life, actually. Yeah. So, and then, because I've had those kind of comments where it's, from family members like, oh, you gotta be careful. You're going to kill yourself on that thing. And I'm like, I feel more alive on it than, I mean, like that's the reality of it. Like there's, for me, that's the reality of it, is I feel more alive on it than worrying about death.
Yeah. In this case, it's like, this is actually part of my like healing.
100%.
Yeah.
Not even realizing it. I mean, I got into motorcycle riding because it was like, it was a cool thing to do. You know what I mean? My cousins all had them back in Portugal and stuff like that. And, I'd go there as I get on the back of the bike, and you're gone. And those back in the days, like no helmets. You're out, you're out in the cutting through the forest on a dirt bike, right? Just, you put 3 guys on a motorcycle because you just got to get from like one little small town to another small town. And it's like, oh, there's another guy hitchhiking, get on the back.
Pick him up.
Yeah. And you'd have like 4 people on a motorcycle, right? And so, but over the years, I realized that it was mental
Yeah.
healing being on a bike.
Yeah. I think it's nice because, like, I mean, the guys sort of have this reputation as like, guys don't work on their health. They don't seek active therapy. They don't they're sort of like, I'll figure it out on my own. But maybe part of like what you're describing is like a self-healing. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Some people go for walks, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same environment, right? But it's that, take your dog for a walk, right? And you're more preoccupied with the dog, maybe chasing a ball, you're going for a run with the dog, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
You've disconnected from all the other stuff that's bothering you, and you're just like spending time because you're just going for a walk.
Yeah.
And the responsibility is, I got to keep an eye on the dog, right?
Yeah.
And so you're distracted from all the other stuff. And the same thing with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Right? It is mental. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't seek help if you really need help, but I find it's a good way to.
Yeah, I bring it up because I think it if you say like, some guys don't take care of their health, like guys don't understand. It's like, well, maybe there's like an intuitive way that you guys are like, that it is therapeutic. That you do adopt activities that do neutralize the stress and help kind of rebalance you. It's just not a formal medical setting.
No, not unless you're doing it live on the bike and you're talking to somebody.
No, I think that would be so worse. That would be that'd be trauma. You would hate going on a motorcycle. You'd be like, oh, it's depressing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about coffee.
I love coffee.
Yeah.
I love coffee. I love good coffee.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of bad coffee out there. Not gonna lie, there's been some times where on long road trips back in the day where you just, taking kid to a hockey game in Ottawa, first gas station coffee. You're drinking it just because you're just used to having. You drink it even though you don't like it.
Yeah.
Things because.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah, the addiction of coffee.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
But I like this coffee now.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Wow. Where do I start?
You gave me.
I gave you, but where did it start with me? For me, it started because my wife would send me texts. She's like, really? $60? Like, that's the way it would come across. It's like, really, $60? Because I'd be loading up a Starbucks card on the phone, right? And then one day, she was at a chiropractor's office, and a orthomolecular nutritionist was sampling the coffee. And she mentioned to Franca about some health benefits. And so Franca reached out to me. She's like, if I were to bring a box of coffee home, would you try it for 30 days? I'm like, really, Frank? She goes, it's healthy. And as soon as she said healthy, she got me. I'm like, I could try it for 30 days. So I dedicated myself to drinking that and only that. And then after 30 days, I was just like, I really don't notice anything different.
Yeah.
And then I grabbed a Starbucks again. And as soon as that,
what is this?
It was just different. You know? And I told her, I said, I can't drink that stuff anymore. And then, we just got on to drinking this. And it's been 6 years. And I love it. And the beauty is I can take it anywhere I go with me. Right?
Yeah.
I just went to Portugal. I took like a bunch of coffee with me. So it's easy to travel with. That was nice. And I know I'm always getting the coffee that I like. No matter where I went, I'm always getting my coffee.
Yeah, because it's...
consistent.
Yeah, I mean, and they're like the instant... It's like freeze-dried or whatever you call
Instant in the sense that when you add hot water to it, you instantly get coffee.
Sure.
But not instant as in chemically brewed.
Right.
Right. So if you take a look at this, the granules are very fine, almost like that,
it's almost like a powder,
a sugar substance, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas opposed to when you take a look at a product that you would buy in a supermarket, it's big grains.
Yeah.
These are freeze dried.
Right. Okay.
Right? So both, instant in the sense that you add hot water, you instantly get coffee, but not instant in the sense that it's, freeze dried or chemically brewed. Right.
What's the brand name?
Organo.
Organo.
Yeah, Canadian.